Like this show and want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And now you can even add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's music analysis, your own radio show, or something the world's never heard before. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hi, and welcome to the Vocal Fries Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Carrie Gillen.
And I'm Megan Figueroa. And it's hot, Carrie. I was just thinking, we're going to record and I'm going to sound so dull and boring because it's summer doldrums and it's so hard here.
I know. I feel very extra lazy.
Yes.
It gets like over, I don't know, body temperature.
Fair enough. And not only that, but it was like close to above dog body temperature the other day, which is like 101 or something.
Oh, I was just going to ask.
I think I was just at the vet with my dog for like his routine and it was like 101 or something I got asked, but I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, now that you compare it to body temperatures of humans, I'm like, oh God, once it gets above a dog. And my dog has just been a puddle on the tile since it's been summer, so
yeah,
it's rough.
One of my cats is also doing that. Streaky. Supergirl's cat. That's the same name. I didn't name it. I didn't name him. But anyway, he also just like lies out along the tile.
Yes. With like their little frog legs behind them. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't blame him. I want to do the same thing, but the tile's not that comfortable. So I mispronounced someone's name. And of course, we never want to do that, but I also know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thankfully, she told us. So Gwendolyn Rerig, at least that's the IPA she gave me. So hopefully that is this time correct. And I'm so sorry. I should have been able to tell from the way it's spelled, but
Well, luckily Carrie's reading an IPA because I can't read IPA.
That's not possible.
It takes me a while.
Okay, fine. I mean, neither of us are on the P side. We're all both closer to the... Well, you're on a different kind of P side.
Yes.
But closer to the syntax side, I guess, the S side.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, and I also want to thank another patron from last month. There's always like some sort of tech issue, and this time the tech issue prevented me from finding out that they were our newest patron, and that is Joshua Hillip. And I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes. If not, send IPA to Carrie.
Yes, please do. And feel free to have a message letting me know, even in the... Because you can leave a message when you become a patron, letting me know, hey, this is actually how I pronounce it. And by the way, in case you don't know what we're talking about, Patreon is a site where you can support all kinds of artists and podcasters and YouTubers and almost anything you could think of, that any kind of creator you can think of. You can support us there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Check us out at www.patreon.com/vocalfriespod.
Yay.
All right, and now we're going to talk about something kind of...
Oh, yeah, this is fresh.
It's very fresh.
Well, okay, so you sent the article to me, but you haven't read it. But I haven't. It's fucked up. An educational magazine out of the UK, TESS, reports that the school's minister, Nick Gibb of the UK, he came out talking about the importance of oracy after a primary school has reportedly banned using the word like as a filler.
Alex Darcy taught us that there are many different meanings of the word like, and so they're targeting, I mean, there's probably a few different uses of like, because they're not, I'm assuming they don't know how many different kinds there are, and they're probably just thinking that 3 or 4 of them are conversation fillers, even though none of them really are conversation fillers.
Yes. So they're shitting on the word like, which, as we've said so many times, we love the word like. It's
great.
So useful. And it's ridiculous, the idea of banning words that aren't slurs. It's like, what are we doing? And so I guess it's Copthorne Primary School. So apparently they have also discouraged kids from using single word replies such as sad, nice, and good. And I'm just like, I remember this in school, them trying to get us like not to avoid using to be as a verb. And I'm like, that's the most useful verb ever. Like, we need it.
Yes. So my dad also tried to avoid it when he was writing his stuff for radio. He was also taught that using be was bad, and it sometimes works. Sometimes you can find a better, more like interesting verb if you replace be plus whatever, but often it ends up being kind of stilted.
Oh yeah.
And also, so in this case, like not being able to respond with a single word, that feels like you're targeting something else. They're trying to, like, when someone just responds with a one-word answer, it feels very non-cooperative. So I'm thinking that really what they're trying to get is to teach the kids to be more like cooperative and to like respond with more information. But like that's not really the way it's worded here. That's not really what they're targeting.
No, the way it's worded, they're saying that they're trying to get kids to expand their vocabulary, which I think that it makes people like you said, it feels uncooperative. They feel uncomfortable by kids answering that way, as if the kids aren't respecting them in some way, I think. But the idea that this is going to expand the vocabulary, that's just not, it's really hard to respond when someone is talking to you in class. You have to respond in front of your peers. There are just so many reasons why it's hard to find the words that you're looking for.
Right. And if you're sad and your answer is sad, saying I'm sad, okay, that feels more cooperative, but is that really more informative? No.
Right.
And like, isn't it enough to find out that the kid is feeling sad? Like, isn't that like a trigger to do something to help them?
Yeah.
Rather than being like, can you say that in the form of a full sentence, please?
I think that sad is actually a very informative word. So,
yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. One word sentences can be super informative, especially I think in these circumstances and when it's involving children. One word can tell you a lot. It's more frustrating when an adult responds with one word.
Surprised, yeah. It is true that sometimes I am purposely uncooperative when I answer with one word.
Right. And right. And so I think what's happening is adults are interpreting children as adults when they are not adult interlocutors yet. They can use very complex grammar, obviously, but they haven't got the pragmatics down yet, which is what we're talking about. Anyway, so let's go back to like.
Yes.
Okay, the school's executive head teacher, Christabel Shepard, told the Sunday Times, "It is when children are giving you an answer and they say it is like when you're like, they haven't actually made a sentence at all." Well, they have made a sentence. It's just not a sentence that you understand how to interpret. I guarantee the other children know how to interpret it.
Yeah, also, you're only giving us part of what the child said, probably.
Yeah, probably. Probably there's a quote there, because, like, when you're like, there's maybe not a quote, but like an explanation of how they felt.
Right, exactly.
I'm sure there was something there. But, yeah. Even if they trailed off there, yeah, there's still a meaning there.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this just goes back to the idea that people have to change the way that they're hearing us, hearing children, hearing whoever, because like is really useful. It's not going away anytime soon.
And it's been around for a long time.
Yeah. I hate when people can understand each other and they still want to shit on the way someone says something. Right. It's like, that's the goal here, is to understand who you're speaking or signing with, or, you know, so it's like that. If communication shuts down in that way where you can't understand someone, okay. But that's not the case most times when people are shitting on each other for the way that they speak. So,
no, and you know, like I think part of it is they want their students to be able to talk in a particular way so they can get jobs later. I mean, that's fine, but that's not saying you can't do this. It's like, do this, but also do this other thing. It's additive, not subtractive. That's what education should be.
Yeah. And I also still think we should start hearing each other differently or interpreting each other differently.
Well, we absolutely have to.
Yeah.
But the reason why they're not even trying is because they think they're doing the right thing by teaching them the way that will get them jobs, which, by the way, that's a whole other issue of, like,
for sure.
why are we only focusing on that? But even if that's your goal,
yeah, right,
you have to remember that just shitting on them is not actually going to get you where you want to get them.
Nope. It just makes you an asshole. So, goodbye.
And teachers being assholes is somehow the most hurtful to me.
I know.
Even though I know it's very common because it can be a very conservative area of the workforce, but doesn't have to be.
No.
And because education is so important to me personally, but also I think so important to everybody, it hurts me when teachers are assholes to kids.
Yeah. No one should be asshole to kids. God. They're little sponges. They're clay. We're making them out in our likeness in terrible ways.
Or we're making them hate education.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no real good outcome here. Either you're making them into another monster like you, another asshole like you.
Yeah.
Or you're turning them off of education.
Yeah.
Neither of those are good.
No. So thank you to all the good teachers out there that don't want to traumatize children.
Right. And there are many really good teachers out there.
Yeah.
And I know many of them.
Yeah.
So this is only directed at the asshole teachers.
Yeah, who are probably not listening to this. Although, you know, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Probably not.
I mean, maybe, because I think that there are teachers who are mostly not assholes, but they're assholes about this one thing.
It's true.
And they may want to learn about how not to be an asshole in this way as well.
Yeah.
So, this is for all the teachers who want to learn to be better, and also the teachers who don't. But
this one goes out to you.
All right. Okay. So today we're going to be we talk with Amanda Montell about her book Wordslut. Today we have Amanda Montell, who is a writer and reporter for Baltimore with bylines in Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan, Women's Day, The Rumpus, Birdie.com, and Who What Where she is a staff features editor. She's the author of the nonfiction book Wordslut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language, which will be published by Harper Wave, an imprint of HarperCollins, on May 28th, 2019. As a pop linguist, Amanda's insights have been featured in Time, Glamour, Bustle, Refinery 29, Hello Giggles, and Bust Magazine. And Amanda graduated from NYU with a degree in linguistics. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. We were very excited when we got a copy of your book.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I was excited too. I received them after many of my friends received them, and they were posting photos of these beautiful hardbacks that I'd been waiting with bated breath for. So I'm excited too. I just got mine too.
I have to ask right away, why Wordslut? Why that is the title?
Gosh, the process of titling this book was such a saga, let me tell you, because what do you name a book about words, first of all? It's just such a challenge. And also, the book covers such an enormous range of topics that it was really, it was so difficult. There was a bit of a bloodbath over the title, I have to tell you. I would send my editors, lists of like hundreds of options, that anything that like
Wow.
poured out of my brain, everything from like something like super academic to title options that were really like punny and kind of cringy, which like wasn't me at all. So I was airing like, this book had like 3 former titles before Wordslut, and they were all kind of like coy and not as daring. But when you write a book that has chapter titles like Slutty Skankos and Nasty Dykes, a list of gendered insult, a comprehensive list of gendered insults I hate but also kind of love, you kind of have to go bold. So finally I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just call it Wordslut.
Yeah.
There's there are like a few, I've seen a few brands that have the word slut kind of cheekily in the name. Like there's a restaurant in LA called Egg Slut. There's a brand of liquid lipstick that donates all of the proceeds to different like social justice organizations called Lip Slut.
I have one of their lipsticks, actually.
Oh, do you? Which one?
RBG.
Nice. I love the title Word Slut. I think the reason why I was like withholding a little bit was because I was genuinely just thinking like, how are my parents going to explain my book to their colleagues? But now my parents like have come so far on board to the title that they just call me a slut in whatever context they can. I'll be like, I'll have like an oat milk latte, and my mom will be like, oat milk slut. I'm like, Denise, simmer down.
God, I love that.
I know.
Oh my God.
It's ridiculous. So I don't know. I think
It's amazing.
Ultimately, what is so perfect about Word Slut in my eyes is that it's this juxtaposition of like sexiness and friskiness and cheekiness and nerdiness. And that's like who I am and what the book is. And so I think it's perfect. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, speaking of nerdy, I mean, it has the IPA on it, which
It does.
I fucking love.
Oh my God, thank you. That was my edit. It came in like really simple, and the cover design, and I was so thrilled by that because I really didn't want it to be frilly. I wanted it to be bold and graphic. And so when it came in, I was like, it came in with a bunch of color options, and there was like a red, which felt a little too Handmaid's Tale-y, and there was a blue and like some white ones, but they were really simple, and I was like, these are almost perfect, but can we put Word Slut and IPA below? And I like got one of my old phonetics professors to confirm that I had like actually transcribed it properly, because like how nightmarish would that have been for me to like put a schwa where a schwa shouldn't be,
Lisa Davidson, right?
Oh my God, yes, it was!
She's fantastic.
Yeah,
God,
she's
how
great.
funny.
We follow her on Twitter.
She was my phonetics professor.
Yeah, when we said that we got an advanced copy of your book, and we posted a picture, she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad she went with the IPA that I suggested."
That warms my heart. You have no idea. You have absolutely
I'm so
no
glad.
idea. Oh my God.
Oh my God. So I was reading Wordslut the other day, like in public, and I was just like, with my eye kind of like challenging someone to like ask me about it. Like, ask me about it. I would love to tell you. So,
Did anyone ask?
No. I mean, I was like surrounded by college age kids. They don't care. Like, they're like, I could read Slut anywhere and not notice, but I don't know. But I do wonder what conversations it might start.
I know. I've carried around, I have this like clear purse. You know how those like PVC purses are in now?
Yeah.
I have like a clear top handle purse, and I'm like embarrassed for people to see my belongings through it. So I've been like keeping the book that I'm reading like in front of it to like block my like keys and like ibuprofen, whatever embarrassing garbage is in there. But I've been keeping Word Slut in there, like shameless promo. Like someone asked me about the bright yellow book in my purse.
That's perfect.
And not yet? No one yet?
No one yet. Still
It'll happen. It'll happen. So why did you want to write this book?
Well, it was, this book is just like a culmination of like everything I've loved in my entire life. So I was a linguistics major in college, but that was like, I figured it would be useless. I figured it would just be like a cringy millennial trash degree that would lead to nothing. But
wow.
but like loved it more than anything. I mean, I say that with like the warmest heart in the world because linguistics is everything to me. But I just couldn't foresee, because I was too lazy to pursue a PhD. Like, trust me, I would love to be a Dr. Montell. My parents are, and I would love to tack a little PhD onto my name. But I'm too impatient. Like, I took one graduate level sociolinguistics seminar in college, and like I was just like hungover and like couldn't analyze the spectrogram. Like it was just like, I don't have the patience for a PhD. So I was like, all right, well, that's kind of the only way that you can use your linguistics degree is if you like pursue academia or like, I don't know, become a speech pathologist or I don't know. I'm not brilliant enough to be like a computational linguist or like a computer programmer or whatever. I just like want to talk about like accents and like silly things all day. So I was just like, whatever, I won't pursue linguistics, but like it'll be a fun thing to talk about at dinner parties. And indeed, it is such a fun thing to talk about at dinner parties because everybody is interested in why they talk the way they do. And if you have some information about that, like people are just going to like gravitate towards you. So I wanted to pursue writing as my career, and I wanted to publish a nonfiction book because that's all I've ever read and loved. And my favorite writer of all time, Mary Roach, is a pop science writer. I don't know if you've read her work, but I'm obsessed with her. And so there were a lot of steps leading to this, but when I finally got on the phone with my literary agent, who's an angel, and kind of like gave a big spiel about like everything I know and do that could possibly lead to an interesting or sellable book, she was like, that language and gender stuff you know about, like that's interesting. And I had already been making content about language and gender in online video form for this website called Wifey, which is this like online media brand founded by Jill Soloway, the creator of the show Transparent. And so I had been making these like short 5-minute videos that would comment on like some pop culture event happening, but from a language and gender perspective. And so I had kind of like been making content about this already for like 2 years, or a year at that point. And I mean, when my agent thought that this would be a sellable book, I was just like delighted beyond belief because I was like, oh my God, like people are going to like, a publisher is going to pay me to like nerd out for 300 pages about language and gender. Like that's my dream. And it is. And I still am shook by it. Like that, like just me and my, like this book is just like such my vision. And I'm so lucky and privileged that they let me run with it. Like that IPA on the cover is like the perfect example of like, they just, they could have, I don't know what book covers sell. Like they could have really pushed for like a different sort of design, but they just like let my voice be my voice. And the little illustrations throughout the book.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
I like really, I mean, I work by day in the beauty industry. So I like care a lot about packaging, and I just like, I wanted there to be illustrations, and I wanted that, and I like talked about this when I was initially pitching the book. I wanted them to feel like sort of like cheeky, modern, hip, but still simple and elegant, comments on like textbook illustrations, like you have like your graphs and your charts and your diagrams of like what a vocal tract looks like when producing vocal fry, but they're like cute.
I loved that one.
Thank you. And I collaborated with this amazing artist named Rose Wong, who like illustrates for the New York Times. She's exactly my age. I just like picked her and we made these illustrations together, and the publisher just took one look at them and was like, perfect, great.
Cool. That's amazing.
So yeah, like that illustration of like genitalia slang throughout the years. Like I just loved what she did with that, and we like kind of took an existing chart that was just a little more straightforward and academic, and made those like cute little illos on it. And I'm so delighted by how it all turned out. And
well, I'm just delighted that the picture of how the vocal cords look when you're vocal frying still looks like vagina. Like vagina. Good. Don't lose that. Don't ever lose that.
Because it does. Speaking of my phonetics class, like I will never forget like the scandal of when my professor played the video of a human larynx like phonating which it looks like the lips of a vagina. Like there's nothing.
Yes.
It clearly does. I mean, even
Yes,
if
it
you've
does.
never seen a vagina in your entire life, you're like, holy shit, that's sexual. So, like, everyone in the
Absolutely.
class was just like looking at one another, being like, "That's what's in my throat."
Yeah.
It's true. Every time, so I used to teach linguistics, and every time I would show that in my intro classes, yep, that's the exact reaction I would get, and I would be like, yes, it's exactly what it looks like.
There's something poetic to me about like we all have a vagina in our throat.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and misogynists will like shrivel and die once they realize it.
I delight in that.
So speaking of genitalia, let's like skip right ahead to that chapter. So you wrote a whole chapter on words for genitalia and sex. Why did you think it was important to cover this in your book about gendered language?
I initially based a lot of the content in this book on that sex, gender, and language course that I took at NYU because I was so like ignited about this topic by that class as someone who like didn't know anything about it, and I figured that other people would be too. So when choosing what I wanted the chapters to cover, I referenced my old syllabus like kind of a lot, and there was but at the same time like added my own spin and focused on things that I'm personally enchanted by and that I thought like people my age or in my age group would also love. Like there was obviously no chapter in my college linguistics class about cursing.
A shame. That's a shame.
It is a shame. It is a shame. You'd think if there are classes on like Game of Thrones analysis, you'd think there'd be a class on cursing.
Well, there are in some places, but
Yeah. But there was like a section on like our narratives of desire, and I just thought I like came across that John Green is this lexicographer who does all these like fun lexicography studies where he'll like unearth slang over the years and like kind of communicate what that says about our culture and how our culture has evolved. And so I in like going over that narratives of desire chapter, I like stumbled across this John Green study where he like chronicled all of our like however many there were, like 1,500 genitalia slang terms over the past few hundred years. And I just like was so tickled by that. Like they're so ridiculous. I mean, they're entertaining, but they also like thematically are quite disturbing. Like the idea that the metaphors and slang words that we use for a penis imply that it's this like violent thing, and sex is like an aggressive, penetrative thing by nature, and a vagina is just like this passive, also kind of gross receptacle for a penis, and terms like cum sponge and whatever, like that's so gross. And so I really like, I thought that genitalia was just like a sparkly, like edgy entry point into talking about these sort of deeper topics. And I think like, we all think about, I mean, everybody wants their sex life to be better, and everybody like has like everybody's had at least one like icky experience, at least like every woman or non-normative gender that I know. And like how we talk about sex is just this like really accurate portrayal of like how we approach sex in general. And that, I mean, that could be a whole book.
Yes, it absolutely could.
Yeah, I mean, that topic is just like on my mind a lot and felt really necessary to include. And of course, like the genitalia terms are just fun. So felt necessary.
Well, and it helps to normalize. Just like keep saying like, cunt or like all these words that you have in your book, just like no problem. Not cunt. That's not a good example because there's,
there are bad uses of it.
Yeah. Well, just vagina. Let's just take vagina. Like, just like, these things need to be normalized because we're so scared of them in the US. So scared.
I remember there's that other crazy factoid where Shonda Rhimes like created or kind of popularized the word vajayjay because there was that instance when writing a Grey's Anatomy episode when like broadcast standards allowed the word penis in an episode 18 times but wouldn't allow the word vagina like twice. Yeah. That is so telling to me. Like that really, really says something about how we view female sexuality and desire. And what I love about like talking about the linguistics of this all is that like when you can warm yourself up to, because like I grew up scandalized by the word vagina and pussy and like all that. So you're like taught that it's wrong and controversial and gross, and like you can say penis, 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 dick, 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 no problem. But like, I mean, it's just the default male thinking that I talk about throughout the entire book. Like, we are so comfortable with male sexuality and maleness in general, and then like so reviled by female sexuality and femaleness in general. And you know, the way we talk about sexuality like really represents that. So I think like what's cool about talking about this stuff, starting with the language aspect, is that you can like really just blame the science on why you're using these words, you know? Like, it's like we're just doing clinical linguistics here. Like, I'm not talking about a pussy. I'm talking about the word pussy because a linguist told me that I was allowed to. So that can kind of like warm you up to the idea and get you like a little more comfortable with it, I find.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? Have either of you seen This Film Is Not Yet Rated?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good. You should watch it, Megan. It's really good.
I love that documentary. I think about it a lot. I thought about it when there's that footnote that I have in the book talking about how like oral sex performed on a penis is like all over movies, like of every rating. But like the second you imply cunnilingus, it gets like an R or an NC-17 rating.
Yeah.
And I learned that from that documentary.
Yes. So if you show male male orgasm, no big deal. But if you show female orgasm, it is just off the charts. Like, holy shit, too much sex.
Totally.
It's really enlightening.
All of that messaging like really, really affects how we perceive our own sexuality. Like the ratings that movies with female orgasm are given, the slang and terminology, even textbook terminology that we use to describe our bodies can really inform how we see them. Like there was that medical definition that I found online of a vagina that said like the organ that receives the penis.
Yeah, I read that and I laughed.
Oh, heteronormative shit.
Like where to begin addressing.
I know, right, yeah.
So yeah, it like pervades everything, and it was just essential to address.
Absolutely. So what's your favorite slang term for genitalia?
Oh my god. Oh, it really depends on the context.
You can choose one context.
Like if we're talking about like funny terms, there's so many good ones for penis that are just like so silly. Like one-eyed trouser snake, that's disgusting.
Oh, I know. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
like diddly whacker. It's just like so whimsical.
Whimsical, yes.
For vagina, oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, so I learned this term from Jill Soloway, the what's it called? The vaginal clitoral vulval complex or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
That's such a mouthful, but it's like when we're talking about like our bodies down there, like our reproductive organs, like the vagina is really just the canal. Like it's that is actually just like the canal, the canal. No. I was blending hole and canal, and we got canal. Wow. Should we just call a vagina a cannoli?
I think so. I think that's my new favorite slang.
It's totally a cannoli. Because it's a canal and a hole. A cannoli.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
Holy cannoli.
So that like vaginal clitoral vulval complex, that is a mouthful, but that is like actually a more accurate representation of like everything that's going on down there, because like when you're having sex with a woman, like you're not just interacting with that canal, with the cannoli. You're like interacting with, the whole thing is a vulva, and it is a complex, and there's like, you know, stuff on the outside and stuff on the inside, and it's a whole
thing.
Vaginal clitoral vulval complex. I think it's that. But VC, like,
yes,
it's cute, like
VC squared.
VC squared.
I love it.
We love math.
I love math. I really honestly do.
Okay, so if you love math, then you must love like syntax.
Yes, I'm a syntax/semanticist person.
So we're on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes, we are. But we can still talk about sex, man.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what connects us all.
It brings everyone together.
Syntax, like, I got through it. But I was like, if I have to build one more syntactic tree, I swear, like, I can't. And like semantics, I just, at the end of the day, don't really like thinking about thought, if that makes sense. And I like really respect people who do. Like, my mom was a philosophy minor in college, and my brother loves that stuff. And I love like the discipline of logic and philosophy. It just doesn't like light my fire. Who knows why?
Yes. Well, I'm not really that big into philosophy either, actually. I find like it's kind of too masturbatory.
Totally.
But I do like thinking about what things actually mean or what sentences actually mean, but I don't care as much about sort of like this top-down view that philosophy has.
Totally.
Anyway.
No, I get that. And that's what's fun about linguistics, is that it's like so nitty-gritty and nerdy. And like, I will never forget, because I didn't know what linguistics was when I got to college.
No, me either.
But I've been right. But because no one knows. I looked up some stat. It's like 0.05% of college graduates every year have a linguistics degree, which like I guess makes sense.
It's tiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty new field. Pretty new, but yeah.
I feel it's 40 years old or whatever. But like I didn't know what it was, but I'd been thinking about and loving this stuff my whole life, and I'll just never forget how, like, in my linguistics 101 class, do you know Jillian Gallagher? She's a linguistics professor at NYU. She was a PhD candidate at the time when she taught my like 101 class. She studies like she's Quechua.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, she's so beautiful. Like, I just remember like being in this class, and I didn't know what linguistics was. You imagine like Noam Chomsky, you're like, what is this?
Sure, yeah.
She was just this like little elf with like these big eyes who was just like so smart, and I was like, oh my god, I want to be you. And the first exercise she had everybody do was, she was like, okay, everyone, I want you to think about, just starting to get us to think about like the vowel and consonant inventory of English, and like just things that we totally take for granted. And she was like, I want everybody to come up to the board and write down an English sound that you have found is hard for foreign speakers to pronounce. And I was like, oh my god, like these are my people.
Yeah.
And I just like ran up to the board and I was like, ours. Everybody hates an American R.
It's so true. It is so true.
Wait, so you knew that going into that class? Like, you were like that, you knew that immediately. Everyone has trouble with R's.
Oh yeah, because I love accents and dialects. And in fact, like in college, there was a period, and even after college, when I thought I might want to like pursue being a dialect coach, because I just like love accents, and I'm not like a pro by any means, but I do have an ear for them. And like, I just like, I can't, and I heard once in an interview that Kristen Bell does this too. Like, if I'm watching something and there's someone with an interesting accent on TV or whatever, like I can't help but like try to do it.
Same.
I spent my whole life perfecting my Australian accent, so don't make me do it, but.
Okay, I won't, because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am intrigued.
I think I have a pretty good Australian like O vowel when they're like, oh, I know.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh.
That's good.
I
can't
pretty
do that
much
at
thought
all.
you were Chris Hemsworth then. I couldn't tell.
I get that all the time.
Back to the book. So you say in the book that language is the next frontier of modern gender equality. Why do you think that is?
Oh my gosh, it's such a bold statement. Now I have to really like put my money where my mouth is.
I mean, it stuck out to me. It's like it was highlighted and underlined, and it might as well have been in another color.
So that comment is really just based on conversations that I've been in and that I've seen about language. Like, I've been able to connect with people who would otherwise never want to engage in a conversation about feminism or gender equality.
Sure, yeah.
Based on opening the conversation with language. Like, people are just, and I've gotten feedback from people who've read the book already that like women who have male partners and who, started to like engage in a conversation about gender equality, and the partner was like resistant to want to get on board. But the second they provide some like empirical data from a nerdy study illustrating their point, the dude is all of a sudden like whoa, that's so interesting. I never thought about that before. Yeah, I really see that. And like when you can point out these patterns that linguists have noticed through their studies of different language corpuses, of like the semantic derogation of female insults, and just like terms referring to women in general, and you compare them to what has happened to terms that we use to describe men, and there's really no parallel. Like, you can't deny that that really like illustrates something about our attitudes toward men and women in real life. And the grammatical gender stuff, like that's so empirical. That's just like so clinical, but it really has this significance. Like, you can really show people like we still have like huge inequities in our culture when it comes to gender, and the respect and the power that each gender receives and is granted access to. And that's really what I want to say. Like, language and power are connected, and gender and power are connected. And like, if you can show someone that, if you can like illustrate through language the gravity of how of the power disparities that exist in our culture based on gender, then like that's huge. And I think I just think that's like the next big conversation that we're going to be having. It's already started with conversations of gender neutral pronouns and gender inclusive language. And, you know, people get upset about ideas of political correctness and, you know, linguistic sanitation and those things. But it's like, language changes exactly as quickly as social attitudes do. And so it only makes sense that this conversation is happening now. And I like just really want to continue it and like emphasize that.
Yes. So you bring up gender neutral pronouns, but there are other ways that language can be gender neutral, like this, like you point out in the book. Like, we try to go
like
towards
chairperson or
even just chair versus chairman. But you also point out that it's, you know, that's not enough, which I agree with. But why isn't it enough?
Like I said, I mean, you can't by encouraging someone as like our new social norm to use one word over another, by saying like chairperson or server or flight attendant, as opposed to like chairman, waiter and waitress, steward, stewardess. Just by changing someone's language, you can't change their attitudes. And so there are people who will always continue to think that a chair of something is a man by default, regardless of what language they use. But so by forcing, quote unquote, you can't force anyone to say anything.
And they like to remind us of that. A lot of men like to be like, you can't force me to do it.
Yeah, and that is certainly true. You most definitely cannot force anyone to say anything. But the key point to remember there is that, like, yeah, we are perfectly at liberty, thanks to the Constitution, to say whatever we want, but we have to acknowledge that our language choices and our politics are not separate. And so people aren't mourning their ability to use whatever language they want to use. They're mourning the freedom to think that their language and their morals aren't connected, which they are. And you're making a political statement when you say things. And that's always been true, but it's like even more true now because there's more of a microscope on this sort of thing as the gender and sexuality spectrums and equality and human rights are being spoken about a lot right now. But the thing is, like, yeah, if some place of business encourages all of its employees to start using gender neutral language and doesn't allow anyone in the office to refer to anyone else as like cupcake or sweetie or whatever, which we've all encountered. I mean, most of us have encountered in a workplace environment. Like, as I mentioned in the book, I once worked at an office where the boss would refer to every woman by her hair color.
Oh,
yeah. I also chuckled at that when I read that. I was like, geez.
And then, like, truly, I did not make this up. There was like this guy named Daniel who had like zigzags buzzed into his head, but like he didn't get called anything special. So
yeah, he wasn't zigzag. Yeah,
totally. So like you can force bosses in the workplace not to use that kind of language, but they're still always going to think that
Mm-hmm.
they're still always going to think in this like problematic gendered way. However, the young people who come up in that business and hear them using gender neutral language, like that could very well have an impact on them. Ultimately, like we just want to raise a new generation of more inclusive people, and the language that we use, like really does have a huge impact on the next generation. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Why are gendered insults harmful?
My goodness.
You talk a lot about, so an example of this might be cunt.
Everything has to do with context, right? So like words in and of themselves don't have abusive meaning. It's the meaning that we subscribe to them based on our opinions and attitudes. And so a lot of our gendered insults, and the fact that there are so many more negative insults for women than there are for men, and there are countless studies illustrating that, and you can read about them in chapter 1. But like there are all these empirical studies of slang and casual conversation that illustrate that like basically any word the English language has ever offered to describe or refer to a woman has at some point devolved into some kind of like sexual slur, essentially. And that really reflects something about how we see women, that it's the linguistic objectification of them. And we don't even realize like how when someone, when someone does something negative that's completely unrelated to their gender, we insult them by referring to their gender. Like if a woman does something that we perceive as mean or backstabbing, she's a bitch and a cunt. But like, what does that have to do with her vagina? Like, what does that have to do? Like, it's inaccurate to criticize someone's gender when really you're trying to criticize their behavior. And it also just like propagates like really damaging attitudes and perceptions and expectations that we have of each gender. Like having words like pussy and wimp and candy ass, and like they propagate damaging viewpoints of men and of women. They don't allow men to be soft. They don't allow men to be vulnerable. They don't allow men to be quote unquote weak. And, similarly, all of these words just reinforce like super, super problematic gender stereotypes that kind of work in service of the patriarchy, Calling a woman a bitch because she's not delicate and polite enough for you, you're basically like forcing her into this box of delicateness and politeness. You're not like allowing her to stand up for herself or doing whatever she's doing that is annoying you. And like equally, by calling a man like a pussy, you're saying like, well, women are weak, and God forbid you seem anything like a woman.
Yeah. And also, whenever you talk about pussy in that way, you're wrong. Pussies are strong. They push out babies. They can like take a beating. You should call them scrotums.
Yeah, that's right.
Because those are weak.
There's that like amazing Betty White quote that I like include in the book in a footnote somewhere, where it's like, why do people say, grow some balls? Like, balls are so sensitive. You should really say, like, grow a vagina, because those things can really take a pounding or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's not logical why we call people these different things. It's like, it reflects, like, really, really icky, like, sad, cultural views that we have of each gender. And so, like, there's a reason why we love these insults. Like, they're fun to say, like, just in terms of, like, phono-symbolism. Like, we love a bitch, we love a cunt, we love a dick. They just, like, thwack in your mouth. They're a blast. It's not that we need to outlaw them. It's just the context in which we use them is so important. And it's, like, part of the reason why my book is called Wordslut. Like, there are plenty of linguists and regular people who think that like the word slut deserves to be abolished, and that like having a special word for female promiscuity is like really damaging. But I like the word, and like and part of that just has to do with like my personal experience of it. Like I've been called a slut abusively maybe like once or twice in my entire life. So and I'm really lucky. I mean, I've been the subject of many other gendered insults. It's just this particular one is not my cross to bear. But I like the idea of reclaiming it. Not everybody does. There are lots. I mean, and there will always be disagreements about like what slurs deserve to be reclaimed. There are disagreements about the word queer. Like that's regarded as one of the most successful examples of an abusive slur being reclaimed. But not everybody is chill with it. And the same is true of slut. But I think like me using it in the title of my book also demonstrates that like I'm not a proponent of political correctness. Like I'm a proponent of like being conscious of your language use, not like coming up with these rules. You can't say this, you can't say that. It's like be choosy and and thoughtful about your language choice. And I like word slut because I am a word slut and I love words and I just like want to bathe in words.
Oh wow.
That I think, you know, gendered insults can obviously be unbelievably damaging, but we individually have the power to rectify that.
Well, yeah, I've been arguing that we should definitely take back cunt because I think it's a great word. And I don't really like vagina. I don't think it's a nice sounding word.
So cumbersome, so long.
It is a cumbersome word. It is.
Like vag is okay, but vagina for some reason I really don't like. And I don't think it's just sexism. I tried to interrogate myself about this, and I really do think it's the sound.
I'm with you. I'm completely with you. I like made a video, like back when I was making those like 5 to 10 minute videos about this stuff. My first ever video was called like, I hate the word vagina. Because like, yeah, it doesn't have, there's like not a single plosive consonant in it. So like, hello. Well, when I was little, I thought it was vagina, and I liked that better.
Yeah, that is cuter. I would also accept vagina instead of cunt.
I don't think it's gonna stick for anyone though. I don't think it's like trying to make fetch happen.
We don't want to start off a fun genitalia word with a labiodental fricative.
Cannoli is good.
Cannoli, yeah.
Totally.
So one of the things that I was so surprised by in your book, and it's just like a tiny little detail, but that lesbian didn't make it into the Oxford English Dictionary until 1976, which, by the way, is my year of birth. So I had no idea it was that recent.
Yeah, I mean, what's sort of at play there is that, like, the Oxford English Dictionary is updated, like, really slowly. There's a possibility that it might have made it in there, like, 8 years earlier or something. But yeah, no, I mean, like, isn't that completely insane? I love, I mean, what that factoid speaks to and whether it was going to be added in 1976 or 1985, like, I mean, it's all just hideously recent. And what that really speaks to is, like, our lack of acknowledgement of lesbian identity, which is also, like, so, I mean, I talk about that in that chapter, Time to Make This Book Just a Little Bit Gayer, how, like, the acknowledgement of lesbian identity in media and movies and TV is, like, it's brand new. I mean, it's brand spanking new. Like, the accurate portrayal of lesbian identity, I mean, what is that? Like, I mean, that's, like, 10, 20 years old. So, yeah, I mean, like, lesbian identities have largely been dismissed and hidden from view, and that's kind of what that linguistic factoid represents. But I also just love the example sentence.
Yes, I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Women shouldn't write poetry. That's for, like, invalids or lesbians or whatever. Like, I forget what it says.
And also, who is it by?
Oh, who's it by?
Daniel Day-Lewis's father.
Oh, Daniel Day-Lewis's father. That's right.
Amazing.
Was he an actor too?
No, he's a poet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So he's just, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, there are so many amazing little facts like that I wanted to include in the book and just couldn't. I mean, they're endless. Like, deciding what little factoids like that to include is just, like, it tortured me. But
well, that was a good one, because I was just like...
Totally.
So where do you think English is going? Or do you think or hope it's going?
Well, that's sort of what the last chapter in the book talks about, and I consulted some linguists about this, because we want politics and language to simultaneously move in a right direction, and I think that they are, but I think it's like really incremental, and it's going to kind of be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I think like what's really great is that a lot of gender neutral language has already made it into general use and like our everyday canon of speech. Like, it's great that on birth certificates and driver's licenses, some states are offering a non-binary option. People are, at least in my circle, but again, I live in Los Angeles, which is like a progressive place. People are definitely coming around to singular they. And again, it's like if you people are like really feel threatened by singular they because people feel threatened by changes in grammar. But if you're able to give them little fun facts like, well, this isn't the first time that a plural pronoun evolved to apply to a singular usage in English. That happened with thou and you. Like thou used to be the singular second person pronoun, and then you extended to mean all of it. And then people are like, okay, that's pretty airtight logic. Like, can't argue with that. And like, we already use, singular they without even noticing it. Like when we say, somebody left their umbrella under the table, you give people facts like that, and then they kind of like warm up to it a little bit more slowly, but or like a little bit more quickly. But yeah, I think like there are some that I just think it's generational, like as our next generation, we have to help them along the way. Like with our language usage, like we totally have to help them along the way. We have to encourage like kids now and like Gen Z and the next generation to be more open to grammatical flexibility and openness to linguistic change and gender neutral pronouns and like being more conscious about their uses of insults and genitalia slang and whatever. Like we totally help them out. But like, the fact of the matter is like, it is kind of too late for a lot of people because their political ideology is already what it is. And you can like, my parents are like liberal academics, but like it is hard to get even like them on board with some of this language change because they've just been using language the way they have their whole life. And so, it is possible to get people on board with that sort of thing who are a little bit older. But I think like the main thing we have to focus on is just like taking responsibility to make sure that our language reflects our politics as much as we can. And if that means like not using you guys as much, like people love that phrase, but once you realize like the problems underlying it, at least I used to throw around the term you guys all the time, but once I really like examined it and realized like there is no way that this has become a gender neutral second person plural. Like you gals would never earn the same lexical love. Like there's a reason why we think you guys is so like cozy and casual, and it's because of default male thinking. It's like it's that same problem. So like once you realize that, then you don't even want to use you guys anymore. But some people really do. So it's like there are sacrifices that you have to make, but I think it's just a matter of taking the responsibility to make sure our language reflects our politics so that the next generation grows up in that environment,
Do you have one final like message for our listeners about your book?
Gosh, one final message for the listeners. I am just desperate to like create a new generation of people who a new generation. I sound like Lena Dunham in that opening episode of Girls. Like, I'm the voice of the generation. Not even. I want people to nerd out about language, and I'm so committed to and passionate about this idea of it being a way to open up a conversation about like deeper political topics that normally wouldn't be discussed. And so I just hope that like people who never otherwise would pick up a book about linguistics or who never otherwise would pick up a book about feminism will like give this thing a chance. And I really hope that people at the very least will be able to bring up the factoids in it at a dinner party and like have conversations they otherwise wouldn't. And just feel empowered by it and feel inspired by it. And that's just all that I want. I just want a bunch of like empowered, like foul-mouthed nerds crawling.
Oh, yes. Squad goals.
Yes. Find me on Instagram at Amanda_Montell. I post there a lot. It's just a fun little account to follow. And yeah, that's kind of it. That's all I really do. Just the IG. And you can find my writing around the internet. I'm a staff writer at Who What Where. Well, I write a lot of like beauty and celebrity content. I love profiling celebrities. That's like I like moonlight as a linguist, but by day I just like later today, right after this, I'm going to interview Asa Gonzalez. Do you know who that is? She's like an action star or whatever. She's like a babe. I don't know.
Cool.
So I write about language and feminism and all these things, but I also write about like fun pop culture topics, and you can find my writing around the interwebs. Follow me on IG and I'll follow you back, and we can nerd out in the DMs about labiodental fricatives.
Awesome.
Very cool. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know It's a book, how do you call it? Promoting frenzy that you're on right now. So
yeah, so thanks for coming on our show.
Yeah.
Of course, thank you. This was a joy. It feels like it just feels like coming home to talk to some linguistics nerds. So thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And people who so love to embrace their vocal fry. So
that's
always good too.
Yeah.
You guys can have a vocal fry off.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. A vocal fry off. It's amazing.
We like to leave our listeners with one final message, which is don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole. Don't be an asshole. An amazing gender neutral insight, by the way.
Yeah, everyone has an asshole. The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at VocalFriesPod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.